Hello, I'm Doug Thompson, and welcome to the Tanium Podcast, where we cover the latest in tech solutions from Tanium, the global innovator in cybersecurity. On today's episode, we're discussing the benefits of strategic partnerships, specifically how you save time, energy, and considerable amount of money integrating Tanium and ServiceNow. Joining me today is Brandon Wolfe, Senior Director for Strategic Partnerships here at Tanium. Welcome to the podcast, Brandon.
Thank you, Doug. Happy to be on.
Tell us a little bit about you. How did we get here?
Yeah, so I am based out of New York City, been with Tanium for just over 3 years, just hit my 3-year milestone. And my entire career has been in the IT service management and IT asset management space. So Tanium was a natural evolution coming off my last role. Wanted to get into an organization that was really focused on that endpoint piece. And since I started at Tanium, my entire focus has been on strategic partnerships with ITSM solution providers, primarily focused currently on ServiceNow.
Before we get into partnerships, we need to start with something that may seem pretty basic to an enterprise, but in reality, it is not. The Configuration Management Database, or CMDB. That's what tracks all the physical and virtual assets in any organization and maintains all that data in one place. It should be a single source of truth, but too often it's not. At too many enterprises, the CMDB is full of data that's weeks old and fed by too many data sources. Brandon, I'm guessing you see this problem a lot.
Yeah, so when it comes to any IT service management tool or IT asset management tool, the CMDB is the heart of the organization. And this is where most organizations struggle. If you don't have visibility over every device, over every piece of software, it becomes incredibly difficult to protect those. It becomes difficult to build automations. The CMDB is so foundational. And when it comes to Tanium, we excel at that endpoint data. And so I think it was a natural evolution for us to say, how can we provide kind of this industry-leading endpoint data into where it matters most? And that is a perfect fit for somebody like ServiceNow. ServiceNow is, when we look at Tanium's customer base, they like to say that the world works on ServiceNow. And that's a reality when it comes to Tanium customers. There is a huge overlap in our customers who are leveraging ServiceNow for their IT processes, for their HR processes, for their security operations. And the heart of all operations in ServiceNow is the CMDB. And that's something that we can provide the most high fidelity, real-time, accurate data quicker and better than anybody else.
Yeah, I talk to customers about that have a CMDB or something, and they just say that they can't trust it because what they're really doing is taking from the IT asset piece of that, they're taking sources from different things. Could be Active Directory, could be 18 different tools, and any time that a human touches data, naturally, well, at least this human, it's sort of bad things could happen. So you can't really trust it. And then also the fact that if the data isn't current, it's not as helpful, right? If I'm working off old stale data, I'm guessing what happened 2 weeks ago, trying to shoot a problem I've got today.
Exactly. And what often happens is people lack data. They lack CMDB data. They say we're missing different pieces. And so the next step is, well, let's set up another integration and maybe we'll be able to pull this data from another data source. And that works for a little while. And then you have visibility gaps into other types of operating systems or other types of networks. And eventually you get to the point a couple years into your implementation and you have 24 tools integrated that are feeding data. Some of the data is competing with other data sources. You spend a ton of time just manually trying to maintain that CMDB, and it's always out of date. And as you had said, when it comes to protecting your endpoints, when it comes to understanding from a procurement perspective, what have we purchased and what are we using? If you're working off of bad data, if you're working off of stale data, you don't have that accurate picture. And so as organizations start to just send more and more data from more sources, it actually creates more complexity and creates more problems and manual effort as opposed to having a single number of sources that are able to provide that accurate real-time data across all endpoints and networks.
And that's an important thing. When I go visit customers a lot, they've got a lot of investment in PowerShell scripts or some type of other things that they've made to make what they had in place sort of work, right? And it doesn't really work, but it completes a task per se. And getting them to realize that through a sort of a platform of platform integration approach, where one partner is doing what they do very well, tying in, getting what they need out of another partner, isn't that, just because you can do it with something, say, for example, just because you can do a lot of the things with Tanium, is it the best and most impactful way to do it? Right? Is there better? So thinking from a customer experience, yeah, I could do this, but what happens if my PowerShell guy gets hit by a bus? Right? And then I'm in a world of hurt because I can't really adapt or feed it. And that's where I think these integration partnerships, strategic partnerships, really come into play.
That's exactly right. And as you start to customize your environment more and more, what happens is it may meet your current needs, but when a new feature comes out, when a new platform capability comes out, when you need to integrate another data source, you add to that complexity. You add to additional customizations that have to happen. And so workflow automations start to break down. You don't get the most value out of the platform because you're unable to use it the way that it was designed. And so that's really important from our perspective is we want to ensure that these integrations that we have, they flow out of the box into the natural places that the platform is going to expect, which reduces the amount of complexity and the amount of customization and maintenance that's required just to keep things running.
Right. Keep it simple, stupid is always it's a good principle to
Exactly.
live by. And so you've seen some, just what's the greatest story that you've seen? Do you have an example of somebody that just really sort of transformed the way they were able to do things?
Yeah, absolutely. We have so many different examples, but just off the top of my head, we recently worked with one of the largest global transportation organizations in the world. Longtime customer of Tanium, longtime customer of ServiceNow, but hadn't actually integrated the data between the platforms. And so, just as part of our base integration to feed the CMDB data, so to feed their hardware, to feed their software inventory, and feed their software utilization data, we were able to not only fix the CMDB issues, but reclaim a ton of savings. And so, from a CMDB perspective, this organization, at best, the data in their CMDB was typically about a week to 2 weeks out of date. They were using more than 20 different data sources that were feeding from different operating systems and from different networks. Some of them ran on daily schedules, some of them ran on weekly schedules. They had to spend time each week actually reconciling that data. So, best case scenario, when they were looking at a computer or a server, it was a week or so out of date as to what was actually happening. And on the other side, from a software perspective, they had purchased millions of dollars worth of software and had no idea how that software was actually being used. And so many of the software applications that were being leveraged were licensed applications in which they were paying monthly and annual fees. So we worked together with ServiceNow and this customer just to feed Tanium's asset data and our software inventory and utilization data. Within the first month of turning on that integration into the CMDB, we had brought them from a semi-weekly update to a multiple times a day update of millions of rows of computers, servers, virtual inventory, software inventory, as well as within that first month, they were able to run an audit and determine that there was almost $30 million worth of software that was installed on end user devices that hadn't been launched in more than 6 months.
Yeah, that's not unusual. When I've gone out and I'll do a POC with somebody and we'll do a software inventory, it's like, what? What's this going on here anymore? They used it, like they used Visio once to view an org chart. And that's the last time they really
That's
did it.
exactly it. And I think there's, without naming names, there
Yeah.
are certainly some software applications out there that have extremely heavy licenses, and
Hmm.
a user needs to do something one time or they need it for a month, and then that license just sits there in perpetuity.
Yeah. So, what are a couple of the workflows or work streams? Like, so, when you mentioned ITAM with some other things earlier, and I guess we should really explain the acronyms we're talking about. But what are some of the workflows we've got in process and that's really sort of helping things?
Yeah. So, really, at the core of it, when it comes to ServiceNow, what we want to do is we want to be the eyes and the hands of the organization and let ServiceNow be the brains of the operation. So Tanium has this visibility into every one of your endpoints on every network and what is currently happening on those endpoints. Tanium also can act as the hands, and we can take action. We can remediate vulnerabilities. We can deploy software. We can stop processes from running. But the goal is to allow ServiceNow to really be the brains of the operation. ServiceNow has so much data that Tanium doesn't know about when it comes to business service criticality, when it comes to assignments of services and assignments of endpoints. And ServiceNow is the platform where organizations are looking to consolidate from a workflow and automation perspective and allow this cross-team collaboration. But ServiceNow is only as good as the data that's provided in it. So whether it is just giving complete visibility within the CMDB or taking things a couple steps further and being able to bring in a real-time vulnerability and configuration compliance data into ServiceNow and being able to actually take action from ServiceNow to remediate vulnerabilities tied to change management processes. We want to give the same visibility and that same level of control and remediation that our customers have today in Tanium inside of ServiceNow. So whatever platform they're working from, they have access to the latest and greatest data. And I think that's what's really important is oftentimes not everybody has access to Tanium. Your help desk agents don't always have access to Tanium. Your IT operations specialists don't always have access to Tanium, but they shouldn't be working off of bad data and different tools if users with Tanium access have the ability to see that real-time data.
So like for example, so you're saying like I'm in service now and I'm having Tanium take actions. I don't have to understand Tanium, right? I don't have to learn it. I don't have to do anything. So through the interaction, for example, let's say I've got a service desk call where I need to install Visio, right? I'm not an administrator. I can't do it, these other things. So putting in a request to have that, but is that something they can do from all service now?
Absolutely. So, on both sides of this, from an IT agent or from a help desk perspective, being able to see what is currently running on a device, being able to see software that's currently installed, and being able to take action. As an IT agent, just being able to go in and take action on devices, deploy software with approvals. That's something that's completely possible with our integrations. On the other side of it, though, is there's a lot of time that is spent from a help desk perspective and from an IT operations perspective on manual tasks that are requested by end users. So, with the power of our Tanium integration, we can enable a full self service catalog, for example, where a user can log into ServiceNow, they can select a device that's assigned to them, they can pick from a predefined service catalog of available software packages. If that software is free or doesn't require any kind of license, the moment they make that request, Tanium can go and deploy that software onto the user's device, requiring no manual effort from the IT help desk perspective. Or if software does require a license, we integrate with software asset management in ServiceNow, where we can actually grab that license, go through your approval processes, assign the license to the user, and then deploy the software on the end user's device, again, requiring no manual intervention apart from your user defined approval processes.
So what I hear you saying here is that like for certain workflows, I've actually saved time for two different people, right? For the deploying the application piece. So the service desk, in a manual environment, you go service desk, they're going to send something over to the operations team. They're going to go, deploy it, what have you. Now I've just put the power in the end user's hands and freed up the time again to do more higher value things for the other people.
Absolutely. And that's one of the biggest detriments I think that a lot of employees have when it comes to their help desk is I'm going to log into a system and I'm going to put in a ticket and I don't know when this ticket is going to be responded to. If I need to request software, I may send off an email or I may open a ticket from a self-service catalog portal. And then a week later, I'm wondering, where is this software? What's the status of this ticket? But if I could go in and I could request software, the moment that I request software, it's actually deployed onto my device. The amount of time spent just collaborating back and forth, trying to chase down data, wondering when am I going to get this, especially when it's software that I need right now for something that I need to do today. I don't want to sit and wait on that ticket to go through a queue and get picked up and eventually get manually deployed out there. So you're saving a ton of time and that end user satisfaction, both from the help desk and from the employee perspective.
So what I hear you saying is end users are really bad about planning when they need something. Is that what I hear you saying?
I'm not going to badmouth every end user, but yeah, anybody listening today, I'm sure can sympathize.
I've been there, that's, oh crap, I need this, so I have to go do something. Luckily, we can do that. So, we talked about that piece. What are some other areas where we can sort of really improve life of an organization?
Yeah, so one of the biggest areas where we're having a ton of success with our ServiceNow partnership is ServiceNow has traditionally been thought of as this IT operations platform. But increasingly, what we're seeing from our customers and from demand in the market is organizations want to centralize all of IT, including their risk management, including their security operations. And industry wide, one of the biggest difficulties is there's this disconnect between IT operations and security operations. And so if we take vulnerability response as a example, security operations may own tools that are actually doing vulnerability scanning on devices. And so they're taking in the vulnerabilities. But when it comes to remediating, the actual patching of systems may be owned by IT operations. And they're working from a different tool set. And so security operations may send over a list of vulnerabilities and devices that need to get patched. And IT operations may look at their tools and their data and say, this doesn't align to what we're reporting. We're not seeing the same things. We're not seeing the same missing patches. And then it becomes a game of who's right, whose data is actually true. So what organizations are looking to do is they want IT operations, risk, security operations to work from the same data source, that same single source of truth, and be able to take actions no matter who is doing it. And so we have really nice integrations that work with the security operations suite in ServiceNow, where we can bring in vulnerabilities. And whether you're working in IT operations or security operations, be able to look at those vulnerabilities tied to configuration items in the CMDB in the same way. And when it comes time to remediating those, being able to open up a change record in ServiceNow, have patches and vulnerabilities and configuration items automatically associated with that change record, go through your standard, your normal, your emergency change approval processes and your planning processes in ServiceNow to document when are we going to do this change? How are we going to do this change? And when it comes time to actually implement the change, click one button and allow Tanium to actually do the patching of those systems, all tied to ServiceNow with that full audit history. So again, whether you're in IT operations or security operations, being able to see that end-to-end picture from the same pane of glass.
Yeah, the battle of silos is a real thing, but a lot of people are coming to realizations we can't survive like that anymore. Because it's just
Absolutely.
simply it's a very and the world moves so fast. The bad actors and all move so fast that it's really becoming a detriment to go do that, and you get more people. It's not that everybody's a generalist, but you can see the same thing that's going on. So that's an important thing. So if I had to sort of sum up the three things that are most important here from the relationship, and what would those be?
So I would say the number one most important thing from a relationship perspective is ServiceNow and Tanium have a very, very close partnership. This is not something where we are simply just building integrations on the ServiceNow platform. I work every day with ServiceNow leadership, ServiceNow product managers to help really define these integrations and build them in a way that is going to flow natively. So our organizations are both very, very closely aligned from a go-to-market perspective around these integrations and around the platform capabilities. The second one would be the CMDB is foundational. And it doesn't matter if you're not working from ServiceNow, if you're working from another tool, anybody who's worked in IT operations or worked around ITSM understands that the data in the CMDB flows upwards to every other part of the operations. And so if you have bad data, if you have stale data, if your CMDB is not accurate, you're going to run into struggles everywhere downstream. And lastly, these integrations are free. So that's one thing that is really important to us is, again, a lot of what we can do, if you lived and breathed entirely inside of Tanium all day, you would be able to do all this from Tanium. But ServiceNow has so much contextual information around things that aren't necessarily running on endpoints. And ServiceNow has such an incredible automation and workflow platform. And so we want to be able to simply provide Tanium's visibility and Tanium's control and remediation no matter what platform you're working from. And so that's been really important for us is we don't want to have a bunch of additional charges simply to get the data into the place where you want to use it.
No, and those are great points and all that. So basically, if you implement this type of partnership and integration, you've saved time on both sides of the thing. You've saved money overall because you're again finding those things and all that's, like I said, the software that has been used in a year or two, and then customer satisfaction. You hit upon that earlier, and which is it's really people are starting to look and measure that now because the marketplace is so competitive for workers. Is I don't have to, I can get stuff done, right? I don't have that friction of waiting on IT. Whose problem is it? Well, it's not my problem. I have to wait, you can just get it done. So it sounds like we really sort of remove that friction, just make the organization run more smoothly.
Absolutely. And we've referred to this as the total experience. I think traditionally organizations have thought about customer experience and they've thought about employee experience and treated those as separate functions. And we've looked at this holistically as a total experience, and that if you have an issue that is affecting customers, it's often affecting your internal employees as well. Or if internal employees are running into technical issues, that can affect your customers. And so we want to be able to provide the best experience, whether you're an IT agent, whether you're an end user, an employee, or whether you're a customer. And so it's really important that we elevate those experiences across the board rather than focusing on one specific area.
Yeah, I saw sort of an analogy one time. This had to do with higher education, but it's simply, a university or something, or in this case, a business has many different views of a user or a customer, right? An employee or customer. The employee or customer has one view of who they're dealing with. And so now we're sort of taking this back, looking at the holistic that you said, and that's the view that we're taking.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And really you've already made this investment, whether it's within Tanium or whether it's within ServiceNow or both platforms. You have this investment and we want to help you maximize the value of that investment. And so that's what's really important for us from this ServiceNow integration perspective is, again, it starts at the CMDB, and that's where the automations and the workflow and everything's going to come from. And if you're working off of bad data in the CMDB, you're probably not getting the maximum value out of your ServiceNow investment, both from a financial aspect as well as from a resourcing aspect. The amount of time that is going in just to maintain things on a day-to-day basis, and you're working from a reactive perspective as opposed to being proactive. And so we really want to be able to provide that data that's allow you to kind of make those transformations and mature in the platform beyond where you're stuck today.
Absolutely. Brandon, thanks for sharing your the more news about this strategic partnership we have with ServiceNow and sort of the synergy and the benefits you can get from taking advantage of. So Brandon, thanks a lot.
Thanks so much, Doug.
I've been speaking with Brandon Wolfe, Senior Director for Strategic Partnerships at Tanium. To learn more about the Tanium and ServiceNow integration and the many other ways the Tanium platform can benefit your organization, visit Tanium.com.